Now, having done that, I'm going to come in and do that same kind of operation, but with a slightly different tool. If you could see here, if I go into an edge mode, I can come down here and all of a sudden slice plane is available to me. So if I hit slice plane, what that allows me to do is to have a virtual little plane here, and I can move this plane around, and you can see there's a slice. Wherever I move that this little plane gizmo, I can rotate it as well. So I can rotate this plane around. I can undo the manipulations you do to that plane go into the undo queue. So if I don't like what I've done to it, I can do that. You can see you can scale this thing, but that just scales the size of the gizmo. So if you have a really big object or a really big scene scale size or something like that, and your gizmo is teeny tiny in here, you can just scale it up. It actually doesn't affect the slice at all. It just slices infinitely far. But anyway, you move it around. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to need some cross beams for the frame. So what I can do is I go over here, and even if I get some weird rotations in there, I can come in here and hit reset plane, and then that'll rotate all the way around, which actually that's not the rotation that I wanted, that I was kind of hoping for. So I can re-rotate it back to where I had it. Again, remember angle snap. Angle snap will let you to rotate it precisely. You can keep your eye on the amount down here. You can tell how much you're moving. So now I have 90 degrees exactly. And then keep it nice and even. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and make a few slices along this frame, because I want a couple of beams. I want a couple of crossbars there. I need some support. So I'm going to make one, and then when I'm in slice plane mode here, I hit slice, and then I can move this again, and I hit slice again, and then I can keep doing that. So I can make a few. So I'm going to slice it at just about each one of those, just a little offset from each one of those divisions that I had already. So slice, 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 slice. Now, I've got several slices along there. I can go out of slice plane mode here. And then what I'll do is come up here to polygon mode, and I can pick some polys. So I'm going to pick these polys, hold down Control, 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 pick those polys, and we're going to go in and we're going to come down here and do an extrude. So I'm going to take those and extrude those polys across there to meet up just about to the middle. Now, this is fine, but remember how I was talking about, most objects don't really have these razor crisp edges. So we want to take the edge off those just a little bit. And what we'll do is go into edge mode, and I'm going to grab these edges, holding down Control to select multiples. And then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to do a chamfer. This will allow me to add a little fillet, a little round to that edge. And any other edges you can make, so long as they're contiguous, you can do chamfers to those edges, and they'll feel very natural. And once we have this thing to a point where we like it, we can take this whole assembly, and then we can go to Tools. I could do an instance and offset this by some, and that way what I can do is I can work on either one of them and have the other one update to reflect any changes that I would make. But you can see here I've got some overlap. So if I go over here and go into vertex selection mode and pick all these vertices and move those over. Now each side is updating to reflect the changes that I make. So once I'm done, go out of that sub-object mode and come down here. You see this attach tool, and now I can attach those two things together. And you say, look at that thing, when I attached it, why did the half that I attached turn black? Well, it's because when you have something flipped like that, sometimes these things called normals can get funky. Now we talked about normals a little bit when we looked at the bowl and the normals were flipped. When you create an object, anytime you create an object, these things called normals are created by default. And normally, bad, you don't have to worry about them. But sometimes, in a case like this, you need to adjust the normals. And what normals are is a little attribute for a face that determines which side of the face is the side that's visible, or the outside of the face. And again, normally you don't have to worry about them or do very much at all with them, but occasionally you do have to adjust them. So in this case, the normals aren't pointing out, they're pointing in. And so in a shaded view here, it looks black because it's not being shaded correctly. And normally that's the best way. I keep doing that. I keep saying it. Normally, it's the best way for you to see whether or not your normals are correct. If in the shaded view something appears entirely just black hole black like this, and you can't get it rendered, then it's time to adjust those little thing called normals. Now there's some ways to adjust them, some ways to visualize them. Unfortunately in Edit Poly right now we actually can't visualize what direction they're pointing. For some reason, a functionality that they seem to remove from Edit Poly. But what you can do is you can convert this thing to an editable mesh. So if we right click, get the quad menu here, if we go to convert to editable mesh, and then when we do that, we pick faces. You pick some faces. I'll pick a few here. Pick all of these faces, let's say. There's a little checkbox here in editable mesh called show normals. And so now you can kind of visualize what they're doing. These normals, again, are just an attribute which define which way that face is pointing. And here you have a scale for the normals. You want them bigger or smaller. And in this case, they're pointing out and they're pointing correct. In this case, even though it almost actually, in a weird way, looks like they're pointing out because I have multiples picked here, they're actually pointing in. So you can see that now if I just pick one of those faces and scale up the normal scale a little bit, what it's doing is this is the back face of it, and the normals are pointing through the other side. So sometimes when you're working with normals, like, yeah, they're right, they're pointing out. If you're ever in doubt, you want to just click on one face and look at the other side of it. Okay, so that's one way to visualize normals. Now, you can edit normals a couple of different ways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to undo and make sure I have what I started out with here, which is an edit poly with incorrect normals on this side here. So I'm going to pick by face, and then down here you see there's a little button called flip. What that does is it allows you to flip normals that you have picked. Okay, so you can flip the normals of individual faces. You can flip the normals of multiple faces, and then they're going to render correctly. So you get some real weird errors here where the sort of the normals collide, where there's a discontinuity between the two normals. So what I'm going to do is won't flip them one at a time. I'm going to flip them all at once. So I'll pick all those faces there. Make sure I get them all. And flip. And now they're right, and it'll render right, and it'll look right in the viewport.